Hey everyone, this is FaZe and welcome to my channel. For the first time ever, we're doing a podcast called Creators Today, and I'm super excited to have Kareem Juma on this episode. He's also an amazing content creator, and we're gonna be talking about iPad versus Mac. So Kareem Juma, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you on my channel. If you can just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, man, thank you for having me. I've been a viewer for a long time. And I've done YouTube for a couple years now. I did it when I was like 16, 17, stopped for a couple years, now I'm back in it. I've started making some YouTube shorts about photography and tech, and my long form videos are coming soon. So I'm glad that this can be one of the first ones that we start talking about the devices that we use on a daily to create our content.
Yeah.
Mac and iPad.
There you go. And I feel like now more than ever before, there's like this huge debate on what's the better tool for content creation. iPad, specifically the iPad Pro with the M4 chip, or the latest and greatest MacBook that you have.
That's true.
Yeah. So in today's episode, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. So grab your beverages, your popcorn, whatever it is, and let's tune in to this episode. So let's begin. So Kareem, when I first got into video editing, I primarily used Final Cut Pro on my MacBook. And that was my tool. That is exactly what I used for content creation, because I'm a marketing consultant and content creator, so I work with clients on their digital marketing strategies and editing their content. So the MacBook was my product of choice, right? It was a great computer, and it still is a great computer, and it was a fantastic tool for me to do videos. And then there came a shift where I got the iPad Pro, the first iPad Pro that Apple announced, which at the time still was very limited by its software. It was still iOS, back in the day. And yeah, there was an Apple Pencil and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot you could do. It pretty much was just a bigger iPhone at the time. And it wasn't that much different from the iPad Air or the other iPads. But lately over the years, like you've seen, there's the iPad Pro and the iPad Air, I guess, as well.
And the Mini.
And the Mini. And they've gotten so freaking powerful now. Yeah. And there's so many cool things you can do with the amount of applications that are on it. iPad OS has also become a lot more advanced and powerful. So I decided, you know what, let's start working on the iPad. And because I'm also a graphic designer, so a lot of what I would create would make sense to do on an iPad. It would be easier with the Apple Pencil and just the touchscreen experience overall. So I remember back in 2018 when Apple introduced the first all-screen iPad with the new edgier design, and it was absolutely fantastic, and I loved it. Until this day, we still have pretty much the same exact design. Yeah, it's become a lot thinner and lighter with the new M4 iPad Pro, but it's pretty much the same form factor, right? And I love it. I can't complain. And I use the 13-inch model because I use my iPad as primarily a computer now. And I've been using LumaFusion. So I would always use Final Cut Pro before, but because there was no Final Cut Pro at the time, I started using LumaFusion. I've gotten so used to it that now it's become my editing software of choice. I still use Final Cut Pro on my Mac here and there, but LumaFusion is the way to go. Now there's Final Cut Pro on the iPad, which I use as well. But anyways, I want to kind of circle back. We can talk more about the software and its capabilities later. I know you're a big fan of the MacBook, and you just got the new, M3 MacBook
I did.
Pro. So let me ask you, what do you do in terms of content creation, and why do you think the MacBook Pro is your laptop of choice?
Absolutely. So I am a very picky and particular editor when it comes to photo and video. When I shoot something, I have the vision in mind. I'm shooting it while thinking about the edit because I know how I'm shooting it, and I know what I'm looking for and what I want to create when I take the picture or record the video. There are certain things I do inside Mac OS that iPad can't offer. Now, do I wish iPad had those features? Of course, because that's huge. It's a tandem OLED display. It's a beautiful display. Not saying this isn't, but the fact that you just you were able to do it, take the screen off and walk away. I want that to be for Mac. Like I want this beautiful device with my HDMI port, my SD card reader, my Thunderbolt ports. I want to be able to take this screen off and go take it somewhere else. Or when I'm showing a customer something at work, I don't want to take this whole thing. So if I could just take it off, that'd be amazing. But these applications aren't available on iPad OS, such as photo editing softwares like Evoto, what's it called? Evoto, and like Lightroom and Photoshop are available on iPad OS, but they're not the full version. Same with Final Cut Pro. There are certain things that certain different ways to edit on the iPad that I don't like. It takes too long for me. I don't like that when you use the trackpad, instead of a click, it's like a round dot. I don't think you can change that. That's one of the worst things for me. It bothers me so much. Now, I do like the iPad, but for editing, creating, it takes me so much longer to create this content on the iPad, and I'm like, why would I try to edit on here when I know I have one of these? Okay. I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I love the device, the screen, the keyboard, the speakers. It's amazing, but 16-inch is pretty big. So when the new iPad was announced, I was actually waiting for this, and I thought, when the new iPad comes out, if it's good enough, I'm gonna sell my M1 iPad and get the new one. When I saw what this was, I wasn't impressed.
Why is that? Why were you not impressed?
Dude, because the Mac has a great screen. Okay, it's not dual LED, okay? But this is a liquid retina XDR display, whatever it is. It's good enough. I can reach 1600 nits of brightness on here.
Okay.
I don't know what the max brightness is on that.
2000. 2000, everyone. 2000.
Okay. It's 14-inch.
Okay.
But okay. Was impressed, man, because at the same time, like, if you do this to the screen, doesn't your keyboard go up a little bit? Yeah, see, that also bothers me because I'm always moving around wherever I'm sitting if it's on my lap. And I'm the type that I'll probably do this and not notice, and then either I'll catch it falling or it will fall. Now, the Apple Pencil to me is not that big of a benefit. I bought Procreate, I think it was $10. It was a very fun app to use to pass time, but it's not something I used to edit. I tried it, actually, before I traded in my iPad. I opened Lightroom, I started editing a photo, and I tried one photo edit on the iPad with the pencil. And man, the experience was terrible. I did not like it.
Okay.
I do a lot of AI editing to my photos in Lightroom and Evoto and Topaz. So when I'm using those features, I don't like using the pencil. It's not fast enough. And maybe it would have been faster in the M4, but I never cared to try it out.
So I will say this, you know, there's this big thing about Apple really promoting the M4 chip on the new iPad Pro, right? And as exciting as it was when there were rumors and speculation that the new iPad Pro might get the M4 chip, I was excited. But you know, to go back to your point, I don't care too much about the M4 chip because I've used the M1 iPad Pro, the M2 iPad Pro. I don't think the processing power, the speed that this device can handle has ever been an issue, right? So I don't think that, you know, using this is going to give you better capabilities or faster capabilities that are way more advanced than the previous iPads, right? But to your point, I can see the frustration because, you know, you're mentioning a few things that are limitations for you, right? And, you know, I've been talking to a lot of people, including my wife, for an example. She loves this iPad. She gets so jealous when I'm at a coffee shop and I'm just taking this out to read a book. When I want to get some serious work done, I just put it back on the Magic Keyboard. So she really likes that workflow of mine. And I think the most important thing for her is that she's doing coding and programming.
Wow.
And unfortunately, the software that she utilizes, it's not available on the iPad. So she has to, that's the only reason that she's on the Mac. Now, if those coding and programming apps that she uses or programs that she uses ever trickle down to the iPad, she would jump in a heartbeat. But I think it's those few limitations for everybody, right? For you with your photography and your videography stuff, it's those few limitations that are kind of stopping you from jumping on the iPad. For my wife, it's the coding and programming capabilities. But then you have someone like me, right? And I have completely, you know, been using this as my main computer. It has replaced my 16-inch MacBook Pro, the M3. And because I think it really comes down to what you're using the iPad for or any computer for, right? Like, for an example, I know content creators like me who have also gone full in on the iPad experience. Because if you're trying to do short form video editing or you're trying to do video editing for YouTube, right? You may not necessarily need the most advanced softwares, right? Like LumaFusion is not an advanced software by any means, but it's a great video editing software. And I've done an entire video talking about my iPad Pro workflow, which you can, you know, click on the link above or in the description below to check that video out. I go over all the applications, right? For example, I use this app by GoDaddy called Studio to create my thumbnails. And
I saw that video, it's amazing.
Thank you so much. And it's so cool how with the Apple Pencil, I could be masking things, I can get what I want out of this, right? Now, what's interesting is that those same applications are not available for the MacBook, right? You don't have Studio by GoDaddy on there. If you do, I think you have to use the web experience.
Yeah.
There's also another application I use called Captions, which allows you to get nice captions on your videos and animations and transitions and sound effects for short form video that I edit. And it's much better to do on an iPad than on a Mac, because it's more of that mobile experience that I really like. And of course, from the work that I do, and I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. What work do you do, right? Like for you, do you want to tell the viewers what exactly you do when it comes to content creation?
Absolutely. So my wife and I started doing photography and videography for weddings about 3 years ago. And we have done a lot of weddings. We love shooting. I love photo and video. Back then, I liked video more than I do photo, but now it's kind of switched. I like photo more than video. And I've become a much better editor today than I was before, and I really enjoy creating memories that people, couples, families get to look back on 10, 20, 30 years from now, and I want to always deliver high quality. So I make sure to shoot in the highest quality, get the best colors, and make sure that this is something that their children's children can look back on and say, wow, the quality is better now because we're in the future, but even back then it was amazing. And so my passion is shooting couples. I love it. And of course, we do graduations, parties, etc. But I found to, love doing that, and that's all I want to be doing. And that's why I have the Mac, because it enables me to edit all that stuff really well. I could have kept I still have it, but I could have continued using my space gray 16-inch MacBook Air with the M1 Pro chip, because the M1 Pro is very, very capable. It's still a chip that can do all the work I needed to do, but it's not a smaller device, it's a bigger one. And to be honest, I felt for the catch, I really like this space black colorway.
It's very nice. It's very, very nice.
Not fully black, but it's really cool. I've gotten to really like this 14-inch. Now when I'm home and if I want to watch content and I open my 16-inch, I think, why do I have this? But I don't want to sell it, because I'm the type of buyer who will sell it and be like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. So I'll just keep it and be happy with it.
No, that's great. So I think going back to, what you use your Mac for, right? I think it makes a lot of sense for you, right? But for example, me as a digital marketing consultant, I'm literally creating presentations. I am, creating a lot of reports, doing a lot of data analytics, and doing graphic design, light graphic design work, and also video editing, right? So for me, I also travel a lot. So for me, like, portability really matters. For me, it's about going to coffee shops and having that digital nomad life that is big for me. So I kind of want something that I can have multiple purposes for, right? So for an example, I also use this as an e-reader at times. In fact, I started my YouTube channel talking about digital reading, and I talked about Kindles, and I reviewed Kindles, and Kobos and Nooks, and it was all about digital reading. And here we are today talking about stuff beyond that, right? But what's interesting is that though I love my Kindle, and the iPad does not have an e-ink display, right? But what I do like is the fact that I can, if I'm on a flight or I'm at a coffee shop, I can literally just read books on this, right? Right away. I can just take it out of its keyboard, hold it, and the new M4 iPad Pro is so much thinner and lighter that it's even more comfortable, right? So I can just be swiping through pages, read books on it, not just books, even if I'm like browsing through on stuff on Safari and I'm reading articles, I don't always need to have it in this, I can just be holding it and be manipulating things with just my fingers, right? And so that's what I really, really like. It's as if I'm holding the content right there in my hands, right? And if I want to watch a movie, the Magic Keyboard is great as a standout also. And you don't need the Magic Keyboard. You can get the Smart Folio or any case, right? And it turns it, into a nice stand, and you can watch movies. So sometimes I'll be like, this morning I was having breakfast and I was watching an episode of Suits, and while having breakfast, and it was nice watching that content on the screen, right? So for me, the iPad is an amazing content consumption device.
I agree.
Right? And it's also a great computer, right? So I feel like most people, and I don't say everyone, but I will say most, right? What are they doing even on a MacBook Air, right? They're browsing through emails. They're surfing the web, maybe going and using social media here and there, right? Watching a couple episodes here and there of their favorite show. Sending and receiving emails and text messages, doing Zoom calls. If you look at all those basic things, I feel like this device does it really, really, really well. Even for content creation, I'm a content creator, And I have no issues creating content on here, right? But I think once you start getting a little into the nitty gritty stuff of like, okay, no, I need these certain softwares and applications to do my job and do it well, like you.
Exactly.
That's where, you know, those limitations can become a little bit of a hindrance, right?
Yeah.
Just like with my wife, she's not a content creator, but she does do coding and programming. And unfortunately, based on what she's doing, she can't switch over to the iPad just yet. Now, if anyone here is watching and is a programmer, let me know if there are great solutions of doing programming and coding on this. There were rumors that Apple was going to introduce Xcode that's on a Mac and bring it to the iPad, but that hasn't happened yet. And I feel like the one thing that always bothers me is that there's always that big picture with the iPad, right? Apple's going to bring Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro. We heard that rumor for years. And then finally, was it last year that Apple finally brought it, right? So they brought it, but it's like, okay, after so many years, right? And I feel like Xcode will come eventually to the iPad, but when? You know, it's always about, okay, how is it going to get more and more powerful? Whereas I guess, you know, with you got everything from day one. You buy a Mac, everything is there.
And that's how I feel about products in general, especially this one. When I buy something to do my work on and to create, I don't want it to limit me. I want me to be as creative as possible, and I want this machine to let me do everything I'm thinking of doing.
Right.
And the iPad just doesn't let me do that. As far as, I think the iPad is great. If I had one still, this is what I would use it for. To take it off, you know, the keyboard and show people my pictures or watch content. That's it. Other than that, nothing else I would use it for, because editing, I don't like it on there. But for content, you know, consumption, it is amazing. And then occasionally my wife likes Procreate, and she asked me about it, like, oh, so you don't have an iPad anymore? I can't draw. She never really drew anyway, but she did like 2 or 3 times, and she's like, oh, I missed that. So that kind of made me think, oh, well, this is an excuse to go get a different iPad. But
and you don't always have to get the Pro. That's what people always forget.
Exactly.
You don't need the Pro. You can get the Air.
The Air or the Mini. Like I'm looking into the Mini, and currently it's pretty old. So that's why I'm not going for it. But rumors suggest that in October they may come out with a refresh model for $100 more. And you know, if it has what I'm thinking it has, you know, better display, better battery, and a more high-end chip, I think I'm going to go for the Mini, because I can take that anywhere. It's bigger than my phone, so watching something on it will still be nice, you know. So the Mini, why don't you have a Mini?
So I actually do have a Mini.
You do? Okay, cool.
I do have a Mini. I actually have done multiple videos on the iPad Mini, and I call that actually the best content consumption device because of its great portability, right? If you want to watch a movie, look, I have the iPhone 15 Pro Max, right? But I will not watch anything on this. This is a great device. You know, I like it for social media. I like to use it more as a phone than anything else, right? It's my perfect communication tool. And yes, these phones are getting larger. You know, there's rumors that the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are getting larger, right? I'm all for larger phones, right? But at the same time, I don't want to watch a movie or a TV show. And when you look at the iPad Mini, I think it's the right screen size. It's still small, but it's right, and it's right enough to watch a movie or a show. It's great for reading books on. That's what I've noticed, and I'm an avid reader. So it's great for, you know, reading emails and, you know, browsing through the web, basically just for light content consumption stuff, right? I don't think I could use that as a computer at all.
Way too small.
Way too small.
They don't have a keyboard for it, right?
They don't have a keyboard. It would be too small. The keys would be too small. But I think that's like the perfect device to just like, you know, day-to-day content consumption, right? Having said that though, there are rumors that it might get an OLED display. And if you are an avid reader, then I think that's great for you, right? If you are also just a great fan of watching movies and shows on a small portable device on flights or whatever, I think that's great, right? And also, you can use the 2nd generation Apple Pencil, not even the 1st generation, the 2nd generation. So basically like this, right? And this is the Apple Pencil Pro, and I feel like the Pencil Pro might even trickle down to the iPad Mini because it trickled down to the new iPad Air. So I think, you know, if you want to get some light note-taking or some light drawings that you want to do, right, or light graphic design work, I think the iPad Mini is perfect. And what I've noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Mac users also have iPads. That's what I've noticed.
That was me a month ago. I had an iPad and a Mac,
Yeah.
and I would have the iPad in my bag every day.
Okay.
And I would open it up, and actually, I used the iPad for a month at work. I would update my spreadsheet, I would type everything on there, and I thought, I'm gonna go full in iPad, I'm gonna try it. It just sucked. I used the Google Sheets app. I didn't like the little dot from the trackpad, and but I was like, okay, just ignore that and try and see how the experience is. The keyboard's great, but it was just missing something, you know. But I tried using it once as a secondary monitor. I didn't really care for it because I have the studio display that's 27 inches. It's more than enough.
Fantastic.
The color on there is amazing. That's another reason I haven't switched to any other company's tablets or computers. Apple displays our P3 color gamut, and they're very accurate, not 100%, but they're very close to it. And for me, that's important because I know, of course, people have devices that aren't Apple, but a lot of people have Apple devices, whether that's Apple TV, phone, iPad, or computer. So when they're watching it, they're probably watching or looking at my content on an Apple device. So if I edit on the Apple screen, I know that how I'm seeing it is how they're going to see it.
Right.
So
no, that does make a huge difference. And I think, you know, the biggest thing for me is, can I get my work done efficiently, right? Like, there were small issues that I faced, right, when I first decided to go all in on the iPad Pro, right? Because, you know, you don't have Finder anymore. You have files, right? So file management is very different.
Thing,
and I think that's probably like the biggest complaint people have. Why do we not have a proper file management tool like Finder on the iPad, right? But then as I started to use the iPad more and more and more, I realized I got so used to it. It's not, you kind of have to adapt to the device rather than adapting to you. You kind of have to adapt to it, right? And I think that's where people don't like that shift, right? Now I'm so used to it, I don't mind it. Now I know how to, like, you know, use the, you know, the Files app. And I think it's a decent file management tool. Not as great as Finder. It's definitely not as great as Finder. But it gets the job done, right? And also at the same time, it's also how you set up your iPad. And I've done videos on my channel where I talk about my workflow on the iPad Pro, how I, you know, have these specific widgets and the way I've set it up for it to, you know, be the device I want it to be, right? And I've also done, you know, videos talking about my desk setup and how it's completely based on the iPad Pro. So I have made this device a huge part of my lifestyle. And, you know, when I use the Mac now, it's almost like it's almost like going back, you know? And I say that because it's much more of a traditional computer, right? And this is more of a modern way approach of thinking what a computer is. And it cracks me up because I remember there was an advertisement Apple made. It's like, what's a computer? And because people were like, well, at the time they were like, is an iPad a computer? Is it a toy? What is it, right? And Apple was like, no, it's a computer. So that the whole what is a computer campaign, which I think kind of flopped. Because if you have to remind people it's a computer, then maybe it's not a computer, right? Maybe so I think they changed up their marketing. But I think this device does what it needs to for me, right? And it may not be the perfect tool for every content creator, right? It's clearly not the perfect tool for you as a content creator. But let me ask you this. What would you want to see in a future iPad, hardware-wise, right? And iPad OS-wise, what would you want to see that might make you go, you know what? I think I can jump to the iPad and make it my full computer. So what would you want it hardware-wise and software-wise?
The things I would want to see on an iPad are things I don't believe Apple will ever do. So I don't get excited about them, but hey, we can dream, right? That's okay. I would love to, first off, they made the M4 iPad Pro thinner. No one was asking for it to be thinner. Yes, it's really, really cool. 5.1 millimeters on the 13-inch, I think, and 5.3 on the 11-inch. That's super cool. But I much rather would have had them kept it the same size, but because of the efficiency of the M4 chip, given it a longer lasting battery, that's very important to me. Let's see, the keyboard. The bottom is so thin, right, that I don't like that.
So here, this is what I'm gonna say. All right, so two things. Okay, so that whole issue of, and I don't know how well you can see it on this video, but that whole issue of where like the iPad would just kind of bounce off from you, off of you if it was on a Magic Keyboard, you don't really get that. And also, do me a favor, without touching the bottom part of your MacBook, tilt the screen backwards or whatever. And all right, and then bring it forward. Okay, so see? Okay, so I can...
A little bit different.
Okay, a little bit different. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was a fail on my part, but it's not as bad as the previous one. And what I noticed was because of the thinness and lightness, right? So because they made this thinner and lighter, for one-hand usage or just using it in general, it feels much better.
Point. Yes.
So that does make a difference. And second, they didn't just make the iPad thinner and lighter, they actually made this thinner and lighter as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, this is very... I've never held one of these before, not the new one. This This feels like a toy.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So this has become a lot thinner and lighter as well. So when you have the thinner and lighter Magic Keyboard with the thinner and lighter iPad, this becomes a much thinner and lighter package overall. Because if you remember using the previous iPad Pro with the previous Magic Keyboard, it gets pretty hefty with that, with that package, right? It does. This is so much better now. Yeah. So, and then also with the iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard now, the new one, you get a little bit more flexibility with the viewing angles. You also get the function row keys. Yes. Which that should have been on here.
That should have been there such a long time ago.
Yeah, like why did they wait this long? I don't know. The trackpad has gotten larger. It's now a glass trackpad with haptic feedback. Yeah. You get an aluminum surface now as well, so it feels more premium. And I feel like the aluminum also gives you that lightness as well. I'm not sure if that's a key factor in the lightness, but overall it feels much more refined. And I feel like this is how Apple should have shipped the Magic Keyboard to begin with. Yeah. With the function row keys, with the aluminum surface, larger trackpad. And that larger trackpad has actually made video editing much better for me. Really? Much, much better with the haptic feedback and the fact that it's larger, like zooming in and out of like, my footage, it's fantastic. Wow. So it's improved that experience. So I feel like Apple is constantly doing little things like that that really enhances the overall experience, right? With the iPad. With your MacBook, you obviously have a giant trackpad from day one, right?
Yeah, almost my whole hand, almost.
And you obviously get, the function row keys and you get that full package from day one, right? Whereas with this, it does get expensive too. And that's another thing I want to talk about, the price. Yeah. With this iPad Pro, I think it's $12.99 for the 13-inch.
Yeah. Base model.
Base model, 13-inch. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that. Let me check really quickly. But I think this 13-inch model right here is $12.99. Then you pay $350 more for the Magic Keyboard. Yeah. So when you add all of that together, right, then it gets really, really expensive. And then don't forget, if you want to add in the Apple Pencil Pro,
$129.
Then it gets even more expensive. So it's like you get a very expensive package for the 13-inch, right? Yeah. The 11-inch is also very expensive. So whereas, how much did that cost you right there?
This is $2,000 retail. I was lucky enough to get it cheaper for like $1,500, but regular $2,000. And I didn't have to buy anything separately, right? It came with the, the big charging brick, 70 watts. I think that comes with like a 20-watt charging brick. The keyboard is here, and I have my ports, and this is heavier than the device you have there, but because of the size, I don't mind it. Yeah. But as far as other things I would love to see in the iPad, like I mentioned before, Apple's not going to do it, but if they put macOS in there, I would buy one in a heartbeat. If you could switch from iPadOS to macOS, I would buy one in a heartbeat. People make the comparison that you can use this as a second monitor for your Mac, right? It's not the same. And it's cool to have those functions, but no, man. Maybe, I don't know. I'm very, like I said before, I'm very picky on my products, hence why I had bought the M3 MacBook Air and I returned it. I also want my device to have fans because I do such high payload work that I know I'm going to heat up this computer. So I need it to have, the capability to handle my work. But also, they only put the base chips in there, M2, M4, right? These get the Pro and the Maxes.
But hey, this has an M4. You're still on M3.
M3 Pro,
Not that that really means anything because if yours is what, like an M3 Pro or something like that. So
I mean, I'd love to see a speed comparison, editing some video between the M3 Pro and the M4, but it's, even between an M1 and M1 Pro, the speed is substantially higher on the M1 Pro. Yeah, that's right. That's why I still have my 16-inch M1 Pro. It's very fast. Yeah. So if this is full and I'm working on a project and my Mac Studio is, being used, I can use my M1 Pro. Yeah. So that's also why I keep it. But I don't feel confident doing that on an iPad. But other than that, maybe, I don't care about the camera on the device.
So I never used the camera on this device. And actually, they did a small downgrade with the new iPad Pro.
Yes.
They before would have another smaller camera. I think it was a wide angle camera.
Yeah.
They removed it.
Yeah.
And instead, what they did is they give you like a larger flash or an updated flash, right? Which they're saying is going to be better for taking scans of your documents and stuff.
It's very impressive.
Taking scans was never an issue on any of the iPads. Sure, it's maybe like 1% or 2% better now.
Yeah.
But it did the job well. But then again, who uses a camera on their iPad? Like,
I know.
Please, if you use a camera on your iPad, if you're watching this, please comment below and let me know what pictures you're taking with it.
Right, please, because
I want to know.
I don't get it. I mean, if that's the only, let's say you're at grandma's house and your phone's in your backpack and you have your iPad, okay, take the picture, but come on, man.
Yeah, but I don't want to be that guy, you know?
Yeah, but I also feel like, let me make this point.
Yeah.
If the iPad didn't have a camera, you and I would be disappointed. So it's good that we have it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we get things that we won't use, but if they're gone, we'd be annoyed.
Yeah, because then all the Apple fanboys would be like, what? There's not even a camera on this thing?
Yeah.
What?
And they raised the price.
And they raised the price.
That's true. So no, I'm glad they did that. They also put the camera in the landscape mode, which is great.
Yeah.
It's a natural
Love that
function.
So much. Yeah. That once again, it's one of those things that should have been done from day one. And if you watch my iPad Pro review, I talked about this because it really pissed me off that they didn't do this. Look, when you are booting up this iPad, all right, you know when that Apple logo pops up, it's in landscape mode.
Yeah.
The Magic Keyboard, and I don't know how well you can see this on camera, but the Apple logo is in landscape.
Yeah.
All right. The camera now is in landscape, but then when you look at the logo on the iPad, it's freaking like vertical. Why?
Right.
Like if you're admitting that more people are using this device, not like this, but like this, and that's making you change the orientation of the Apple logo on your boot up screen, on your Magic Keyboard, on and changing up the the having the landscape camera, then why is this Apple it's one of those small little things that really bothers me, because it's like, you're now admitting that this is a landscape first device, right? Yet the logo in the back makes it, I hate it. It's one of those small things, and I feel like a year or two from now they're make that change.
That, I know.
And apparently there was someone from the iPad design team, and we'll pull up the 9 to 5 Mac article that on here in a second. And it basically is him admitting that down the line, they might have the logo go landscape in the future. It's something they're thinking about. What do you have to think about?
Right.
Like what? Like that? This should have already been done, But it's little things like that with the iPad where I'm like, okay, why didn't you guys do this? Like for example, in WWDC, they finally brought the calculator on the iPad.
I know.
Granted, the execution was amazing.
Yeah.
With math nodes, you can be, doing note taking and stuff, and you can be having like these cool formulas and calculations, and it does it for you. But we could have waited for math notes to appear later, right? But why is the calculator coming now, right? And even the weather app, I think we just got the weather app, a year or 2 years ago?
The iPad didn't have it?
Yeah, didn't have it.
But then again, who's checking the weather on the iPad?
I am.
You okay? So there you go.
I want to know what the weather is like. So it's not about the weather, the calculator, because I feel like you can easily pull up your iPhone and do calculations.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like
easy, quick.
It's like a calculator, right?
Yeah.
But it's like why? It's not about why do you not have it? It's like, why are you waiting this long to bring it? Because if you're bringing it, clearly there's a need for it or people want it.
Yeah.
But why is it taking you this long? And the weather app looks the same.
It's the exact same.
It's the exact same.
Come on.
So and then I was watching the John Gruber talk show where Craig Federighi and Greg Jaws, where Jaws and Craig Federighi came on stage right after WWDC to talk about iPad OS and iOS and Apple Intelligence. And they kept saying, if you want good things, sometimes you have to be patient. Well, what were you so patient about with the weather application? You know what I mean?
That could have just been available in the App Store. They didn't even have to mention it. Just download it and that's it. It doesn't have to be a presentation or something. Just move the app and give it it's just weather. And now on your point with calculator, that was pretty cool. Where you can write down and take the notes. That was nice. But yeah, does the Mac have calculator? Yeah, it does. It does. It's like a whack little thing.
Now,
I never use it.
Would you rather use a weather app on a Mac, or would you use it on an iPad as a widget? Or like, think about it. Like, you even had weather and stuff on the Mac before it came on the iPad.
That's true. I don't use widgets. Some of you may think I'm weird. I don't like widgets. They get in my way. Right. I want my, here I have the calculator up. I want my desktop to be as clean as possible.
Okay.
So even if I have like, if I'm working on something, there's a million little videos and photos here, I'll put them in one folder when I'm done.
So we got a minimalist here.
Yeah, I don't like I think you have to do this to get your widgets or something. I don't even know how to activate it. That's how out of tune I am. I don't care about them. But if I wanted to use weather, it would be on the iPad. I wouldn't care to see it on this, or my phone first.
Right. Yeah. So it's like why? So I sometimes feel like it's an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
And I was so happy with WWDC this year, because when they were announcing all the new features coming on iOS 18, like for an example, you can now move widgets and icons around wherever you want, which I used. I have iOS 18 beta on the iPhone 15 Pro Max of mine. I don't use it at all. If anything, I feel like the screen looks cluttered and messy. So I can understand why Apple decided not to ever bring that till now. I guess they're just like, hey, whatever makes the users happy, so let's do that. Also, you can now customize the look and feel of the icons, so you can put a hue of any color of your choice. When you're on dark mode, the apps turn dark. So when they started to talk about iPadOS 18, I was like, all right, they're gonna wait a year to bring these features onto the iPad, right? But no, from day one, iOS 18 and iPadOS 18 are gonna get those same enhancements to your home screen. Also, the new redesigned Photos app that's gonna come on the iPhone is also gonna come on iPadOS 18.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I remember with iOS 14, where they first introduced widgets and stuff like that, they didn't bring it to the iPad simultaneously. They waited a whole year for those features to come to the iPad. So I feel like slowly, Apple is beginning to synchronize the updates.
Yes.
And because there was a time where I felt like the iPad was like an afterthought, or iPadOS was like an afterthought. But going back to what you were saying originally about combining iPadOS and macOS and bringing macOS onto iPad, that's something I always wished for, but now I actually don't care about it. And for two things. One, it doesn't impact my workflow. And second, if they bring it, how great would it be for a touch-first device? Because think about it, they're not making touchscreen Macs because they're saying that our software is not made for touch, right? Whereas iOS and iPadOS is a touch-first, operating system, right? So that's the first thing. The whole OS would technically have to shift around in order for that to work. And the second thing is, the same interview with Craig Federighi and Jaws, they were asked that again. Will that ever happen? And they were very firm and said no.
I know, man.
They said these are two separate devices. They're meant for two different things, right? Yeah. One can be better than the other for most people. Like for you, the Mac is better than the iPad. For me, the iPad is better than the Mac. And they said that, hey, you can even use two devices at once. And they actually said that a lot of Mac users also have an iPad, right? So a lot of MacBook Pro users, they could go for an iPad Air or the standard iPad or the iPad Mini, right? So they're saying that they have different purposes and their design language is completely different. So so knowing that Apple's stance is so firm on not bringing macOS to the iPad, and also knowing that you would have to tweak macOS a lot for it to work on for a touch-first device. For those two things, because I've admitted that to myself, I don't think it's not going to happen. I hate to say it. Things can change, but based on what Apple's stance is, macOS will not come on the iPad. Yeah. And also, I feel like that would cannibalize Apple's sales, because then think about it, who would be buying a MacBook then? If you could have macOS right now on the iPad, think about it, you've got an amazing Magic Keyboard. So the keyboard experience, great. You got a large trackpad, right? You're getting touchscreen, which you can't get on a Mac. Then why would anyone buy a MacBook? And now you even have the M4 chip, which is not available on a Mac yet.
That's true. I think people would still buy, MacBook sales would drop definitely, but I think people would still buy MacBooks because of your ports on the side. If you don't use a dongle, you're not getting HDMI, SD card reader, and extra Thunderbolt ports. Does that have a auxiliary port? No, right? See, that's another thing. I'd never use the auxiliary port because we have AirPods and headphones, so that's not a question, but I want to have it. I don't want the device to limit me as far as what I could do. If they make foldable stuff, which they will, I would love for this to fold and go down, where when it's down, I can see the screen. So at least I have my iPad type look. Because when I'm watching, I don't care to see the keyboard. I would love to just, watch like this. I don't care if it's heavy. It's still small. That would be nice. But at that point, I mean, if you're wanting a lighter weight device with macOS, you just get an iPad Air. But even then, it's, I don't know, man. I'm still going to get an iPad. I'm going to get the new iPad mini.
And that's the thing. Sales. Think about what you just said, right? If you had a foldable MacBook, or you had a dual, like, you can run iPad OS and Mac together, right? That one device would be all, right? But then what did you just say right after that? That, you can see yourself getting an iPad for watching movies and stuff like that, right?
I did.
So it's almost like Apple's like, you know what? We want you to have both. We want you to have an iPad for all the iPad related stuff, and we want you to have a Mac for all your productivity related stuff. So it's almost like they want you to have multiple devices. And I'll be very honest, when I go to coffee shops now, I see a lot of people, which I thought would be crazy to think about years back, but now it's quite a norm, where people will be taking notes, right? Whether you're a student or an artist, they have their Apple Pencil, they're doing stuff with their iPad, and they're using their Mac as their full-blown computer. So I feel like, once again, going to Apple's point, this is almost like complementing the iPad, right? So, and there are rumors too about a foldable MacBook, and that goes way over my head. And we can talk about that some other day. Because it's like, okay, foldable MacBook, and it's gonna be completely touch. They're saying that even the keyboard is gonna be touch, and it's gonna have like haptic feedback, really nice haptic feedback, kind of like how the glass trackpad on your MacBook and my iPad, when you click into it, you're not really clicking it, but you get that sensation that you're clicking into it. So they're going to bring that kind of technology, a more advanced version of that technology, onto the MacBook, right? So it's going to be touch. So it's like, okay, you're going to have a touchscreen Mac, but you're not going to use it as a touchscreen Mac. Yet it's going to be fold. Like, I'm kind of confused with what this device is going to be. Because if you can fold it, the whole purpose of folding it is so that you can maybe have that additional display to watch movies and stuff like that, right? So then I'm like, are we finally getting the device that you just mentioned, but for a Mac?
That would be cool. That's probably going to be like a weird name, like a Mac Ultra Pro or something, and
Mac
they'll
Ultra
still
Pro Max,
right, and they'll make you spend $3,500, like another product we saw recently. Which, if it was $3,500 and it could do that,
because that's what it's rumored to be.
I'd probably buy it. One thing I would like to see on macOS though, and I know tech people have mentioned it before, they should have Face ID here. You have it, why don't I? I think my device costs more than yours.
And it goes back to Apple doing those little things,
man,
where you're like, why? Because I remember when just days before the MacBook Pro announcement, before they redesigned it with the notch, right? Everyone's like, okay, Face ID is coming.
Yes, it's coming.
If it has a notch, Face ID is coming. That's the only reason why you would have a notch, right? Turns out, it doesn't have Face ID.
No. And while I'm using it, I don't see the notch because of my dark background. But even when I open Safari, I don't see it.
Right.
I don't know if I have something turned on, but it doesn't bother me too much. I don't mind the notch being there. I'm just like, give me like a dynamic notch or something, like on the iPhone. Give me something there. I don't use the webcam on this computer much at all. If I want to use some type of webcam, I'll connect a camera or the DJI Pocket 3, but I'm glad it has it, because if it didn't, I'd complain.
Yep, and it goes back to the thing. It's gonna come eventually. I feel like Face ID, because imagine just opening this up and boom, you're already in your home screen, right? Or you're on your desktop screen, right? That makes much more sense to have on a Mac, but yet the iPad has it, right? And I'm currently wrapping up my review on the iPad Air. And that has Touch ID. And to be honest, it's kind of annoying how every single time I have to, do this to unlock it.
It doesn't have Face ID?
iPad Air does not have Face ID.
That's the deal breaker. I couldn't buy it.
See, whereas with this, I open it and hit the space bar and I'm in. Or if I'm, using it just like this, I open it, turn it on, swipe up, and I'm already in my home screen.
This is why I also like that they move the camera, because on my M1 iPad Pro, when I had it on the keyboard, I 90% of the time would open it and it wouldn't see me and I have to type in my password.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, then what's the point of Face ID if I'm not using it like this?
Yeah. Or like when you're trying to download something from the App Store and it's like double click. So when you try to double click, your hand ends up covering like the camera that was there. And that really annoyed me because I was just like, okay, well, why is it there, right? Because from day one, I've always wanted the camera, especially when the iPad got larger, right? When they first announced like a 12.9-inch iPad, that's where I was like, you know what? Okay, it should have landscape, all right? It's a big device. No one's gonna be making calls like this. I mean, I'm sure people do here and there, right? But if you're doing conference calls, no one's holding it like this. They all have it like this.
That's true.
So it took years for them to finally bring it landscape. But then again, it goes back to those little tiny things. I remember a couple years ago, they brought the landscape camera to the original iPad.
Yes.
Just the base model iPad. And I'm like,
so they get it, but we don't. And we have to wait so long. I mean, I get it because you're making it thinner and the iPad Pencil goes there, but Apple Pencil, but you could have just done it, man.
I know. I know. It's those little things that Apple does. Like even with iPad OS, it feels like there's small things they're doing that like the restriction. It's like they're perfect. It's as if they're purposely restricting some capabilities so that you are limited by what you're doing. For example, files could be replaced by Finder
easily.
Like I cannot think of any reason why the Files app is so limited. And yet it is. And I think every year everyone has the same complaints. And some people, believe it or not, it's the Files app that is stopping them from jumping to the iPad. They're like, no, we need proper file management like Finder. And until the day the iPad gets that, we're not jumping over. So I think, it's little things like that Apple, I feel like purposely does.
But why?
Yeah.
Why make my life harder if I'm spending thousands of dollars?
I know.
But they also know that with one little discrepancy like that, you're still going to buy the product.
Yeah, exactly. They know.
They know.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to Android. Look, I have Files app on my phone. Like I was in Mexico and I had my cousin on his 15 Pro or 14 Pro record a video of me and it was an HDR.
Okay.
And for some reason, when I airdropped that video to my phone, it wouldn't save to my photo library. It went to Files. Every time I hit save to go to my photo library, it wouldn't show up. So the way I made it easier to access was I texted him that video. So instead of me having to open the Files app, I can access the video by a text because I dislike the Files app. Just make it easier, man.
No, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you. But I will say one thing. I think if you're a student, iPad Pro all the way.
MacBook Air all the way. Why not?
I'll tell you why. Well, for example, you can have your textbooks, right? And when you're highlighting stuff, right, it's so much better to take notes and do highlights with the Apple Pencil.
Right.
I think that is phenomenal. This is the perfect note-taking device. And if you saw WWDC and you saw how they announced math notes, right? The fact that you can do calculations and stuff, it's amazing.
That is huge.
That's huge. And with, I think, what's that feature called? Smart Script or...
the preview
no, it's like there's, I think it's called Smart Script or something. If I'm not saying it correctly, you're gonna see the right name somewhere on the screen. So it's a really cool feature where you can literally write your notes, and if let's say you don't like your handwriting, I don't like my handwriting.
I saw that. Yes.
It will tweak it so that your handwriting's better, so you can actually see it, and actually it's legible and it's easier to read. I'm like, that's freaking cool. And let's say you're writing something and you're getting a little sloppy and it's becoming slanted, it'll auto correct itself and make it straight. So little things like that, I would never want to write again on an actual pen and paper or something, or a notebook, because I just feel like my handwriting is just not the same anymore. And with this, I can even convert it into text. So there's so many cool benefits of the Apple Pencil working alongside the iPad Pro or the iPad Air. And that's something I want to keep saying, because a lot of people in the comments sections are saying, well, everything you're saying we can do on an iPad Air. We don't need an iPad Pro. I agree with you. I'm with you. if I say you can do it on an iPad Pro, you can also do it on the iPad Air. You know, and the reason I say iPad Pro a lot is because that's the device that I'm using.
Right.
And I still feel like because of its faster processor and the better display, for a true content creator, I think it is the ultimate tool. But that doesn't mean you can't do any of the stuff that you can do on the Pro that you can't do it on an Air, right?
Exactly.
And I feel like with the new 13-inch iPad Air, I think that is actually the device most students or most people in general
are going to go for.
And if my and I think by the time this podcast episode is out, my review will also be out for the iPad Air. So you can click the link above or in the description below to check my iPad Air video out. And I specifically say in that review that this is the iPad for most people.
Yeah.
You don't need the 13-inch, get the 11-inch. You don't need an 11-inch, get the 13-inch. Or you know, whatever size fits best for you. Get that, and it's drastically cheaper than the iPad Pro.
And it's still a good screen. It's still the very good Apple device at a budget price, and now you can get the bigger size.
Yeah.
I think they did that recently with another product, with the Apple MacBook Air. Now it's a 15-inch.
15-inch.
See, because that was the perfect laptop, but it was too small.
Right.
I used this M3 Air for weeks, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Wish I didn't have to get rid of it. When I was returning it, I was sad.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, just look away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good that Apple is bringing their budget devices with a larger size to the audience, customers like you and I who want a larger size. You know, I would love for them to do a MacBook Pro 15-inch, but they did that before. I don't think they're going to do that.
Because I have the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I primarily use that as like a desktop. It never like leaves my house. It's just kind of there, and I use it as a desktop computer because it is a very big machine.
It's huge, heavy too, right?
Heavy, very heavy, very
like
heavy.
doing this on that 16-inch, it hurts, but this is fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, and you know what's cool? Another thing about the iPad that I want to talk about is the fact that when I'm traveling, I actually don't mind for sending like small emails here and there, or messages or whatever. I don't mind the on-screen keyboard. It's actually pretty neat. Yeah, I can I'm not saying that this is the keyboard you need to rely on. It's not the best typing experience, right? But when I'm traveling, I actually don't travel with the Magic Keyboard. I have
you don't miss it?
Huh?
You don't miss it?
No, because if I'm traveling, and I'm talking about like vacations and stuff, right? If it's a work trip, then yeah. But if I'm traveling, I'll just put it in a smart folio because when I'm on a flight, it's just like a stand. There's nothing coming between you, right? And it works flawlessly. I think that's the most important thing for me, right? That it's working flawlessly.
Wow.
And it's even lighter. That's the thing.
Even lighter. Yeah.
So when you're reading books, watching a movie, it acts as a stand, and it acts as just a nice cover, right? I don't always need the Magic Keyboard with me, and I think that's one of the benefits of the iPad in general, that you don't always need to rely on the keyboard. For example, if you're traveling and you're going to be just watching movies or shows on a flight, that keyboard is there with you,
everywhere.
You can't just take it off or whatever and just have the display, whereas this, it's just the display, right?
I do miss that. I do miss it, but I'm saying that now, and if I bought one tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, I don't care. Yeah. So I have a buying problem with Apple, guys.
Yeah. Hey, it's not just you, it's me too. But I think that's good, because at the end of the day, whatever product, there's a product for everyone, right?
There is, yeah.
And what I've realized through my videos and me talking to other family and friends, and it's that there's a device for everyone, and it's all about what fits your workflow, right? The iPad fits my lifestyle, my workflow really, really well, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the same for you.
For sure.
And I want to ask all the viewers to go in the comment section below and just write, what device do you prefer? Do you prefer an iPad? Do you prefer a Mac? And give your reasons why, because I really want to know.
Yeah.
I really do want to know why that device is the one for you. And also, Kareem, I also want to take the chance of letting everyone know about Creators Today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an all-new podcast series, and I'm so glad to start it with you.
I am as well.
And the whole purpose of this podcast is to have creators come together, right? And talk about their workflow, how they create content, how they come up with strategies and stuff, and what devices do they use to get, to improve their workflow and to create content. And there's a lot of great creators that we're going to be collaborating with. So I want you all to just stay tuned to more videos coming, and we are going to have some amazing content creators that are going to be coming on this show. And it's not just going to be on YouTube. So obviously, if you're watching this for the first time and you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel, all right? So you can watch more of the content that comes on my channel, but also more episodes of Creators Today. But also, and you can go on the link in the description below, we're now on Apple Podcasts. So if you're watching the video format, that's great. But if you just, if you're driving, you want to just listen to the audio version, you can now do that as well. So be sure to follow us on the podcast app as well. All of the episodes will drop on there as well. But this has been very, very exciting.
It's been very fun. I want you guys to let us know in the comments if you were deserted on an island for, I don't know, a week and you had to take one. What would you take? And let's just say you had internet. What would you take? Okay. And
Apple Vision Pro. That's what I would take.
I still need to try one. I've never tried it. Never tried one. No, I need to, and I'm very curious. But I'm also not trying it because I have a buying problem. I'm going to buy that thing, so I need to be careful. But yeah, this has been a great episode talking about iPad OS, Mac OS, both devices. And now that they've introduced Apple Intelligence, these devices are going to be even better. We can talk about that on a later date. But thank you guys so much for watching.
And like I said, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more episodes of Creators Today, and also follow us on the Apple Podcast app. Till then, see you next time.
Take care. Peace.